Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for that lovely homily. Oh, so many nice points of connections. But I really want to say that today is a special day for me because you've led me here to come and talk about human trafficking. And I'm very aware that it's not an easy topic to talk about. And I really treasure places, avenues that I can get to share about this topic. Because it's a reality that whether we like it or not, we are involved in. The thing about human trafficking is that it happens all around us. We do not see it because we are not looking. And globally, we have about 50 million people trapped in human trafficking, which is a form of modern slavery. And I'm originally from Africa. I've lived most of my life in South Africa. I've grown to really respect Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela said, to be free doesn't just mean casting off our own chains, but to live in a way that will enable the freedom of others. And I think that is life-changing. That the fact that I, Anne Abok, I am not a victim of human trafficking, I have not survived human trafficking, doesn't mean that what I heard from the federal German police in 2008 that changed my life, that 80% of the illegal African prostitutes in Europe come from Nigeria, my home country. 80%. And as somebody that I believe God has called me to work, full-time ministry, I imagine that what would it look like if 80% of our girls from Nigeria that happen to be in Europe are spreading the good news of the kingdom? The world will be a better place. Now that changed my life. I was born in Nigeria, I grew up in Nigeria, but I never knew this dimension. And it opened my eyes to what I feel like was the burden of Nehemiah. Chapter 2, verse 17. The Bible says there that you see the trouble that we are in. How Jerusalem lies in ruins. It didn't stop there. It went on to say, come, let us rebuild so that we will no longer live in disgrace. It's different dimensions here. It's the level of seeing, the level of gathering information, the level of understanding what human trafficking is and how it affects us all. And taking it to the level of what does God expect of us to do with His Spirit that He has put in us. For Nehemiah, he said to the people that were in exile, he said, come, let us rebuild. He didn't say, come, let me rebuild. He said, come. Because I trust that by now you've seen that we are in trouble. Even though I'm an exile, I happen to be in the king's court, it doesn't make me free. Jerusalem lies in ruins. Ontario lies in ruins. And if you don't believe me, I came here on placement. I'm from the Diocese of St. Albans in England, studying at Queen's Foundation Theological Seminary in Birmingham. I'm just here on a 5-week placement. But because my life has changed since my encounter with human trafficking, that it affects my sisters from Nigeria and also my brothers, and that led me to see that I am also in trouble. And ever since, my life and ministry has been informed by these words of come, let us rebuild, so that we will no longer suffer disgrace. There is nothing dignifying or gratifying when you see human trafficking taking place. We have a safe house in Nigeria, so it means that every day of my life I am in touch with victims who are becoming survivors. So when I came here on my placement, my one thing was I would like to see what the church is doing in the area of human trafficking, because I know it is a worldwide situation. It is evil. It is an organized crime. It is the fastest growing crime in the world. Ontario happens to be the second province in Canada where most cases of trafficking have been reported. And when we got here, I am really very glad for the bishop. Before I met the bishop, I was working with one of your clergy, John, he's not here with us, on how to combat human trafficking. In the two countries, we're looking at Nigeria and Canada. My interest in Canada has been because there's an influx of Nigerians coming to your country. And I'm aware that anytime migration happens, the crime of human trafficking or human smuggling or irregular migration is a potential. And I did not want to wake up to another reality like I saw in Denmark years ago, where we visited Denmark, and I remember clearly a woman who welcomed us said, "Oh, we don't have a problem of trafficking from Nigeria to Denmark. As a matter of fact, if you want to look at those kind of issues, go to Italy, go to Spain." A few years later, I went back to the same Denmark, and there were lots of Nigerian girls on the streets. Matter of fact, our foundational partner at MICAT is Danish, and she runs a night cafe where one night she can be ministering to about 40 to 45 Nigerian girls. Whereas a few years ago they said, no, it's not here, it doesn't happen here. The thing that the traffickers want us to believe is that they're not working here, that it's not happening. But when we create awareness and we start to train ourselves to look, we will start seeing. Kevin graciously drove me here this morning, and sitting with this man, I could hear exactly his encounters with human trafficking. He is one of you. One time, the Canadian police were visiting Nigeria and they wanted a meeting with MICAT, our organization, and they were asking about trafficking between Canada and Nigeria. And when John was also in Nigeria, John from your diocese, we went to the Canadian High Commission and they were interested. But we, before then, didn't have good information. We were looking. We wanted to be ahead of the game. We wanted to prevent it before it started becoming a problem. But guess what? On my first day of placement, I sat under the bishop, and the things I heard, the real cases of trafficking taking place here, I am here to say to you, God has planted you here for such a time as this. Thank you for putting the prayer for the victims of trafficking into the intercession. This is the way to go. Because when I was also required to do a pastoral encounter, the bishop set up a meeting for me in this diocese where I was able to talk to somebody whose daughter was trafficked right here. In closing, when I left that pastoral encounter, I left with a challenge. Because she said, the problem was when I try to talk about it, nobody listens. Nobody believes me. They don't want to call it human trafficking. But I tell you that even now, standing here, I can feel the burden of people like her and her daughter and others who had no help but killed themselves. So thank you so much for willing to have me talk about this. This is just to say hello and to say this is the kind of work we do. But being here with my placement, I can see that the bishop wants us to build on the momentum that has started here before COVID. And thank you so much for being part of that. God bless you.